Welcome back to some new malicious compliance stories, where people complied to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called No Shopping Cart Allowed. About a year ago, I did a lot of shopping at a grocery store for work. Sometimes I would need to grab items from the liquor store attached inside the grocery store. The liquor store operated as its own separate little store with its own checkout, but it was still owned by the grocery store, and you had to enter from inside the grocery store. When you enter the liquor store, there's a sign that you must leave your shopping cart outside. This normally makes sense, as the liquor store is small, and having people and carts all around would cause quite the traffic jam. On to the day in question. On my list for this shopping trip, I had a full load of liquor to get for the bar at work and for a holiday party. I probably needed around 15 handles of assorted booze. As I walked into the liquor store for the shopping trip, there was no one else around, except for the cashier. Knowing I had a large number of items to purchase, I asked if I could bring my empty cart in and park it next to the checkout spot, so I could load it with all the liquor bottles I needed to purchase. I was met with a very nasty, "No, don't you see the sign?" I tried to explain the situation and how I needed many more bottles than I could possibly carry. Plus, there were no handheld baskets around for me to try and manage. The cashier wasn't having it and told me if I really couldn't carry everything at once, I could place some items on the checkout counter while I went to get more. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. I only needed about 15 bottles to cover the month's supply of booze, but I figured why not go ahead and get stocked up for next month. I spent about 15 minutes running back and forth from the shelves to the counter, placing more and more items down, taking up the whole counter. As I was doing this, a few customers came in, and I watched the cashier struggle to work around my items in order to scan and check out the other customers. The look on the cashier's face was glorious, as he had to work around a problem he created for himself. When I finally did check out, the cashier didn't have enough room on the checkout counter to scan and bag my items. The cashier then told me I could bring my cart in to put the bottles in to make room on the counter. I jokingly asked if he knew that carts were prohibited in the liquor store, but he didn't laugh at that one. After a few seconds of awkward silence, I went and got my cart anyway, because it would have been a huge inconvenience for me to run back and forth from the counter to my cart. The next story is called Restaurant Dress Code. I was bartending in a restaurant, and I had gotten my younger brother a job there serving a few months prior. We both enjoyed our jobs here. We were both on shift one night on a slow night. My brother is one to find loopholes in things to push the boundaries of what he can get away with. At the time, I had been at this job for a few years now, and was pretty well versed in the ins and outs of the job and employee handbook. I'm not sure how he came up with this, but he randomly came up to my bar top and had a question about the dress code. He asked, "Does the employee handbook say that we must wear our belt across our waist?" Puzzled for a second, I racked my brain going through the handbook mentally. I was a trainer, so I had to go in depth with new hires about dress code, policy, etc. After a second, I said, "No, I don't think it does, but it does say one is required." I saw the twinkle in his eye glimmer. Then he took the belt off and strapped it across his chest, Rambo style. A few minutes go by. Then management catches his shenanigans and instructs him to put his belt on properly. He refuses and states that he has his belt, and the handbook says nothing about where it has to be. Management argued it for a bit, and then went into the office to do some digging in the handbook. While they were looking through it, my brother went on as usual, getting the occasional question from customers and telling them the situation. All of them enjoyed it and thought it was hilarious. The servers and kitchen staff as well. Management comes back after a few minutes and says, "Okay, you are right. It doesn't say. But come on, it's a belt. It goes at your waist." My brother said nope and goes back and forth with management for a few minutes. At this point, you could tell the floor manager was getting annoyed. Management just kept insisting that being worn at the waist is implied, because that is where belts go. Still, my brother insists that's not the case, so management doubles down and says, "Well, let's look up the definition." And so they do, and lo and behold, the definition made their jaw drop. Per Google, a belt is a strip of leather or other material worn around the waist or across the chest. At that point they conceded defeat in good humor, and he wore his belt across his chest for the remainder of his shift. We both had a good relationship with the management team, and still laugh about it to this day. Not sure if the wording ever got corrected. The last story is called Got What He Wanted. As a contract cleaner, the food company I was working at decided to start shaving costs in the most pathetic ways. They switched to cheaper plastic cups for the water coolers that were too small for the dispensers and fell through them. Cheaper paper towels. You needed twice as much to dry your hands, because it was so thin that it ended up costing more, and trying to figure out exactly how many toilet rolls they needed to buy per month. For 2 months we had to fill out forms for all the toilets, every time we put a fresh box roll in a dispenser. And after a week they said we couldn't leave the boxes on the form blank. We had to put in a 0, so there was no ambiguity about whether or not we were filling out the forms. Now, in the offices and factory toilets that saw several dozen people using them, there were only a few days where we needed to put a 0 in the box. But the lone toilet in the potato intake building, almost no one ever used it because you could be overheard in the control room next door. But we still had to fill out the form for that lone toilet. So I did, by filling every box with a 0. They complained I was making fun of them. I said I was just doing exactly what I was told to do. In 10 weeks I had indeed only needed to replace 1 roll. There was also a supervisor there, who kept ringing my manager to complain I was rude if I said excuse me, if someone was in my way while I was hoovering or mopping. He also rang my manager to complain that I was being patronizing when I said excuse me please. So my manager told me, in very definite terms, to never ever ask anyone to move. If I was working and they didn't have the common sense to get out of the way as I performed the job they were paying our company to do, that was their problem. That supervisor was not impressed with this compromise, but the manager had the owner of our company as a witness to his complaints, so he was able to point out he was getting exactly what he wanted. Me not interacting with anyone, ever. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.